Good morning. So we did Bible study, but the power went out while I was doing the Bible study, and so we lost the recording. So I'm just going to do a brief overview of what we did this morning, and then we'll pick back up tomorrow morning, 8:30, for those of you coming on live, because we normally meet at 9:30, but I have to be somewhere tomorrow. So we'll do 8:30 tomorrow, which is Tuesday. So we are on Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 14. And basically, we were covering what Tony and Warren Worsby had said, which basically was the same thing that John MacArthur had said on Friday when we were in there. But a couple of things that I had just highlighted from what we learned, Joshua and Moses, that God was in the pillar of the cloud. And so that was confirmation to the people that this was God. Remember, he was the cloud all through the desert. So they knew that that's where his presence was. He had already said that Joshua was going to take Moses's place. So this was just the fulfillment of what he had said. And then my take from this was that we must be obedient to what God is doing currently. Like, we can't worry about the future, because God was saying to Moses, look, I'm going to do, like, you're going to write all these wonderful things down, and you're going to warn the people, and you're going to, you've been a good leader, and you're going to die. We don't know if he really died or if God took him, because we're assigned to die a earthly death once. But God said you're going to die, and when you do, they're just going to fall apart again, and they're going to start whoring after all these other nations and what their gods, and wanting their things, and that's the word that my Bible uses, whoring, because God views our relationship with him as a marriage, and we're to be committed, and we're to work in that marriage and be a part of it. Joshua was a former military captain, and he was very faithful to Moses, to being on his side. We are getting ready to start. We're going to move. Our next study is going to be in Joshua, so that will be a continuation of what we are learning in Deuteronomy. Also the fact that God told Moses that this is what was going to happen. Like, God already knew what these people were going to do. So for me personally, application wise, it's like, we talked about, well, I talked about how frustrating it is to see people come in the church and they'll talk about how God called them and how they just love the Lord, and they going to serve the Lord, and their sacrifice for the Lord. And then a couple months later, or a year or two later, they're gone, or they're too busy. They're not doing their part that they're called to do in the church, which is to serve and to develop people into disciples. And that can be frustrating as a leader. And however, what this is telling me is, like, don't look at that. People are going to be people. You do what God has called you to do. You be obedient, follow his leading, do what he's called you to do. That's what's important. That's what he's looking at. The people are always going to wander off and whore after other things. And there's always going to be people who walk away. But I don't know how you truly love the Lord and walk away. If you truly love the Lord, I mean, like, you had times in life that you go through things that may knock you down for a while, but I don't know how you walk away. But my job is to just do what he's called me to do and be faithful in that. And we talked about how Revelation, let me find, I think it was 19. I take so many notes here. Revelation 19:8. It says that your righteous acts weave the fine linen that you wear in heaven. The only thing you're taking to heaven with you is your righteous acts. And don't mistake righteous acts for salvation. Salvation is what Jesus does for you. You don't have a part in that. But once you are saved, truly saved, you have such a heart of gratitude. You recognize and honor who God is. And then you, out of that, serve him. And you're willing, because of what he did, you understand that he shed his blood. Out of that, you're willing to serve him. So then God tells Moses, like, write this song down, because Moses was a song leader, interestingly enough. And they were talking about the different ways in worship that we and I always thought of like worship as just the music part, but our worship is how we live our life. Like the sacrifice of the animals back then was worship. They touched them. The food and celebration, the hearing of the word and the music and the instruments, the smell of the food. Like they used all the senses in worship. Anyway, so God tells Moses to write this song down for the people because they didn't have the written word then. Moses had just written this down. So they didn't have Bibles like we have Bibles today. How much easier for us to read his love letter, and yet so many people don't. They just ignore it. Or because another thing that we see happening is they don't read the word because they think they're going to church on Sunday and that the pastor is giving them the word. Well, what if your pastor is actually a wolf planted by Satan and he's twisting the word and you don't know it because you're not in the love letter that God gave to you? I mean, hopefully you're in a good church that really does teach the word verse by verse, book by book, but it's very possible that you are also in a church that doesn't and could be twisting the scripture, and you haven't even read his word to be able to discern that it's probably maybe not a good place for you to be. So, God tells Moses, write this down for all the generations, for all the people. Like I want them to know. So Moses does. And it's for all generations. So when you get to, it's happening right here in Deuteronomy, but when you get to Revelation in the heavenly worship, this is like, okay, this is what's going to happen. Pay attention, because this is what's going to happen, and this is what I'm going to do. And so in Revelation, you see the song popping back up again, which when I studied it before, I never realized the importance of it, but it's extremely important. We're going to get ready to go into that Song of Moses in chapter 32. The song shall be confront them as a witness, because God's like, you don't have to guess. Like, this is what I'm going to do. You need to read my word. You need to understand it. You need to digest it. Don't just ingest it, but digest it and understand it, because I'm telling you exactly what I'm going to do. The problem is people aren't reading my word, so they don't know what I'm going to do. So it says the song will confront them as a witness. So Moses wrote the song on the same day he taught it to the people of Israel. And then when Moses had finished writing the words of the law in a book, which is Deuteronomy, it says the book of the law, and put it by the side of the ark. So then Moses went and he taught it to the elders and the officers and then all the people. So that's the notes I have on 31. Then in 32, we got to the Song of Moses, and it's broken into 4 distinct sections. So the character of God is verses 1 through 4. The kindness of God to his people is verses 5 through 14. The faithfulness of God to chasten and correct his people is 15 through 25. I always find this interesting too. Like, I don't like to go to the woodshed, but I definitely, if I'm not doing what God wants me to do, I want him to let me know. Like, I'll go to the woodshed and take the beating because I just want so badly to be in his will. And so it's like, if you are a child of God, then you should desire his correction because you want to be in his will. So he's faithful. And just like we love our children enough to correct them, or we love our children, or we love our friends, or we love whoever enough to be honest with them, that honesty is love. That I'm trying to save you from going down this path that's going to hurt you. That discipline is love. So that third section, faithfulness of God to chasten or correct his people, is verses 15 through 25. Then you get to the 4th section, which is the vengeance of God against his adversaries. So it's like, okay, listen, I love you. This is my character. I'm the rock. I'm all these things. Then he's like, section 2, like he's kind and good to his people. Section 3, but if you get out of line, like he loves you enough, he's going to correct you. And then section 4 is vengeance of God against his adversaries, which is verses 26 through 43. So those were the 4 major divisions. Verse 30 of 31 is kind of part of verse 32. So you have to pay attention. It says all the assembly of Israel. So we get down into verse 32. Give ear, O heavens, and I will speak, and let the earth hear the words of my mouth. May my teaching drop as rain, my speech distill as the dew. Like I want it to nourish you. I want it, your spiritual life. I want it to grow. I want it to be refreshing for you. My speech distill as the dew, like gentle rain on the tender grass, like showers upon the herb. For I will proclaim the name of the Lord, ascribe greatness to our God. The rock, pay attention there, that rock is capitalized. That is our God. The rock's going to be a big focal point in this song. The rock capitalized. Then it goes into all these attributes of God, which is the character of God, right? The rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are justice. A God of faithfulness and without iniquity, and just and upright is he. So we will start at verse 5 tomorrow. That's just a brief overview of what we talked about today. So basically, it's the unchanging nature of God. Like, this is God, this is who I am. The Song of Moses is here at the beginning, it's with Moses, and it's going to be in Revelation at the end. Like, I'm not changing. Here's my plan. It's up to you to open his book. It's up to you to read it. It's up to you to ingest and digest the word. If you do, it's all right here in the word. Like, he's not changing. It's been the same message ever since way back then. He's not changing, and I love this. It shows his unchanging nature of God compared to the fickleness of people. Like, he doesn't change. We are fickle. Like, we can be like the waves of the ocean and in our mind, and what we like, what we don't like based on what we understand or know. He doesn't change. It's always the same. And then we were speaking about the faithfulness of God to chasten his people. Ephesians 4:15 says about speaking the truth in love. I love you enough to be truthful with you. And then the last note I made there is, if people focused on God's greatness, they would not worship man-made idols. And I talked about, we think that we aren't in that category. But I remember in 2017 when the Lord had me quit my job, one of the things that he really, really like imparted to me was that people were just so busy, and we're so busy, so busy, that we don't have time for each other. We don't have time for him. And it's true. Most people do not take time. Like, they think if they go to church on Sunday, that's good. Like, they gave him a fraction of their time. But it requires more. It requires more than that to be able to study and digest his word. And so then you think about, well, no, that's not me. Well, okay, well, you go to work every day to pay for a 30-year loan that someone talked you into that you can barely afford, for some people, not all, or this expensive car, or whatever your toy or your idol is. Are they things that you actually need, or could you live more simply to devote more time to him? And that was the predicament that we were in 2017, because like, literally, when I left my job, I left half our income and all of our benefits sitting there. But I knew the Lord had spoken to me. So maybe that's something that it's something I always pray about, because even in the situation we're in now, I can still get too busy. And I have to be really, really careful to prioritize what's important. But it does require sacrifice. It doesn't come without sacrifice. So anyway, tomorrow we will be in Deuteronomy chapter 32. Sorry, you just got me. I lost the recording when the power went out. We will pick up at chapter 32, verse 5. Have a great day.